Do you want to do more in AdWords and spend less time in there and get better results for your clients? Pay attention to today's show where we're going to talk about the Google Ads Editor. My name is Jason Rothman. Welcome to the YouTube channel of the Paid Search Podcast. As always, I'm joined by Chris Schaefer. Chris, I learned a technique this week. Lead with the big thing. Lead with the big thing. Not your name, not anything like we usually do. Lead with the big thing. What do you think about that?
You put on a tie and a white business shirt and you just play the role and you got smart ideas. That's why I'm here. I'm riding some coattails, and you've always got fun ideas. You know, that's what I'm here for. To follow Jason's lead. Hi, YouTube. We're just about to record another episode, 120.
Wow.
120. You're welcome.
All right, Chris. Well, for everyone on YouTube, we are getting into a highly requested show today, the Google Ads Editor. So with that said, let's get into the podcast. So, hi, everybody. Yes, welcome back to the Paid Search Podcast. My name is Addicted to Money. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, the great Chris Schaefer, the greatest. He's just so great. Chris, how's it going?
Oh, thank you, Jason. I'm good. You know, I love that we have a show. We're so organic that we can respond to listeners and answer questions that they have about AdWords. And we're not just like we're not going to just keep delivering content that nobody wants to listen to. We're going to respond and listen. You guys have asked and we're delivering. I hope you guys enjoy the show today because we put time into it. We put a lot of thought into it. And that's what we're here for. So, Jason, tell us why we can do today's show.
Well, we can do today's show because of Directive Consulting, the go-to B2B and enterprise search marketing agency. They do PPC, SEO, and content. And you can get a free custom proposal at directiveconsulting.com. So we thank them for sponsoring today's show. So, Chris, we have some notes I'm going to go over here. We're going to talk about the Google Ads Editor today. This is a highly requested episode. People want to know how much we use it. What do we do with it? And we're going to get into that. But first, I want to give our iTunes review of the week.
There's the music. Sounds good.
Hazel Dazzle 1.
Hazel Dazzle 1.
He or she says, came to learn, stayed for the funny. 5 stars. Very succinct review here. So let's see what it says. Thanks for providing a great podcast that provides value while being. He didn't say that. Thanks for providing a great podcast that provides value while being hilarious. Learned a lot about Google Ads and how Jason is morbidly obese but carries it well. So thank you for that review. And I do think pound for pound, there's not a person on the planet that has their weight more attractively or evenly distributed than I do. Because, Chris, again, I'm now down to the 440s, and no one can tell because my arms, my chest, my face, everything is just exactly proproportional, and you can't really tell. So, yeah.
I have to say, from the nipples up, you are a very attractive man, you know, and that's the only way I've really consumed your appearance from my end. So there you go. That's about as complimentary as I'm going to get to another man. Now, Chris, I used the word consume though. I didn't really want to say that, but Jason, you're not skipping the big red block in our notes.
Well, Chris, I make the show notes. Okay, just so everyone knows, I make the notes. That's how the show happens. This show is the top AdWords show on the planet. This show has thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners all across the globe, and this show has, I'll be honest, boosted your career, Chris, because of me. I do these show notes. I outline the show, and then I come in here. I'm in show mode. I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to flow, and then I see in big red letters that I never use, big news in AdWords UI, and then it slows me up, and I got to think, did I put this in there? Is this from last week? Should I talk about this?
That's for me.
Okay, We talked for 20 minutes before the show. You want to have strangers talk to me and interview me about my business. You want to tell me about women. Chris, I don't even know what you're talking about before the show. I just kind of sit there and act funny and then try to make some money on
it's just gonna take a second.
Why don't you bring that up?
Just a second. Okay, it's just a second. Listen, Jason, it's a victory. It's a high virtual high five, right? Yay. This is like, if you,
all I'm saying
I know
is
you don't
bring it up before the show because someone's a professional.
Okay.
Okay. So what is this big news?
I'm sorry to bring you down.
Good, by the way. This better be good.
It is. Do you remember a few months ago when we made that special episode requesting 2 things from the new Google UI?
Yes.
It was the big red keyword button that gave us much more information categorized by keywords, suggested keywords. That was the number 1. And then number 2 was being able to filter and categorize by postal code, county, city, stuff like that in a location tab so that we can see all the zip codes in our interface.
Right.
That's number 2 is done. They added it to the new interface. We did it.
So you can like say, show me zip codes, show me counties, and then select those counties and zip codes or whatever.
Yes, in an interactive I keep saying interactive interface. That's weird. But basically, yes, you can do that. You can see it on the screen. You can say, show me postal codes, show me zip codes, and it will show it on the screen. You can say add is targeted, add. And you can do that on a map screen, which was the number 2 thing that I wanted to see in the new UI. And it's in there, and I'm excited. I'm so happy. I'm going to claim it as a victory for the Paid Search Podcast because we were personally rooting for that to happen. Now we just got to get that big red keyword, as we talked about, big red keyword button. And then I think you'd be able to jump in at that point, Jason. I think then you could finally make the jump to the new UI.
Oh, I'm in the new UI, by the way, just so you know. I'm in the new UI.
You are?
I'm in the new UI. I still go back to the old one to manage some stuff day to day in older accounts where you're able to do that, just because that's how I grew up. We didn't know these were bad things. That's how we grew up. I'm just so used to it. But I am getting more used to the new interface, and I'm glad they have that change in there. And by the way, Chris, on new accounts, you got to be in the new interface. So I'm moving over more and more of my time every day. Yeah, and then change history. There's a lot you can't undo from the old one. So they're definitely getting us in the direction, and I'm headed there. So we appreciate them doing that change. And Chris, anytime you have news like that, just throw it in there, and we'll jump on it at the beginning of the show. So that's great. I'm glad you added that.
Okay.
So today we are talking about the Google Ads Editor. What is the editor? Chris, we get asked about this every week. People write into the show at paidsearchpodcast.com, and they want us to talk about the editor. So why don't you just give us an overview of what is Google Ads Editor?
Okay. Easiest answer for this is it's essentially an external program that you install on your computer that helps you to interface with the Google Ads or AdWords program. Okay. So in a bit more complicated language, it uses API to connect to your account. You log in on it, and you can change keywords, you can change ads, you can change just about every aspect, and you can even get data, clicks, impressions, conversions, quality score, all kinds of stuff, and see that information in a offline view. When you're using the view in your browser, it's essentially online. Right? It requires a constant internet connection. This is an offline browser. It's an ability to make these manipulations and changes as a program on your computer that you have to download. Very easy to download. Just do a Google search for AdWords Editor or Google Ads Editor. It'll be right there at the top. Download it for PC or Mac and install and put your username and password, and you're done. Download the stuff, and you can make the changes. Today, what we're going to talk about is how we use it, and we find value in using it. And just to be clear, this is a incredibly diverse tool. This tool can be used in many ways other than what we're talking about. Jason and I'll just lay it out up front. Jason and I do not use this tool for day-to-day management. We use it mainly for adjustments and changes based on something that we might be seeing in the online interface, or something that we know we want to change. We want to change the landing page or something like that. So just to lay it out up front, mostly what we're going to talk about are the ways that we use it for changes in interface, changes to keywords, ads, targeting, copying campaigns, building campaigns, moving things around, changing bids. But there are plenty of people that could talk to you about using this as a day-to-day optimization tool, looking at the clicks, looking at the impressions. It's entirely a good tool for that. So just to lay that out, we're not biased. We don't think that's not necessarily a good idea. We just don't use it that way. So, All right, Jason.
Yeah,
let's go through it. Let's share.
We will have a link in the show notes to the Google Ads Editor page, and you can download it from there. And then, of course, like Chris said, you can Google AdWords or Google Ads Editor. It's the offline tool, and you can make changes there and then make them offline and then push them to the live account. Chris, just so everyone knows, and so you know, I would say my proficiency with AdWords Editor is probably like 75%. I would say I'm in the 75th percentile of people. There's probably people out there that use it way, way more and are a lot more skilled at it. And then there's a ton of people who are less skilled at it. But just being 75th percentile, like kind of qualified in it, changed my career. Just having the basics of Google Ads Editor completely changed my career. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it. And Chris, the main thing I think you and I both do with it is we build new campaigns with it. So you want to talk about like how that process works?
Jason, so here's the way that I use it. I don't use spreadsheets of any kind. I don't upload spreadsheets. I actually, I know that something that you've done and have done in the past and probably still do. Here's what I do. And anyone that's done training with me, I have many times laid out my exact build process. And so you would know that, if you've heard me talk about it, what I like to do is I'll use the old interface big red keyword button to get keyword ideas, to start with a rough draft of keyword ideas. Then I'll do my other methods of keyword research, and I'll have a text document open. I will, when it comes to the point to start adding them into ad groups and creating campaigns, I'll go into AdWords Editor and copy paste directly into each ad group. And if I need to create another campaign that's for mobile only, or another campaign that's a different geographic targeting, this is where AdWords Editor works great for me, because I don't like to actually have anything. I don't like to have anything on the screen or anything, any building part until I know how the frame is going to look and where the keywords are going to go. I've always talked about in my training, you don't want to start buying your furniture before you build your house, right? And I equate the furniture to keywords. You don't start laying out all your keywords until you know where your ad groups are going to go, which campaign is going to go where the keywords are going to go in each ad group. So that's the way that I use it. I copy paste, easy stuff. It makes it much easier. Then I can create a bunch of ads really easily. That's a rough outline of how I use it for building. It's very much an organic type of process, but very plainly, it's at the very end. It's at the very end of my build. It's not at the beginning. It's when I have everything ready. I have all my notes. I have all my ideas. Then I just spit it all into AdWords Editor, upload, and it should be ready to go.
It's interesting. So what I do with builds is we make the campaign in Google Ads. So we actually make the physical campaign. So like, this is a search campaign. This targets this area. We're using this bidding strategy. The budget is this. The schedule is that. That's it. And then I leave it empty with no ad groups. And then what I do is I use a Google Sheet. And someone really maybe I'm sure someone has training out there about this, but it's so cool what you can do. I list out my campaign, Chris. I list out my ad groups. I list out my keywords. I copy and paste my keywords to do exact match, to do phrase match. I have a broad match modifier tool. I use broad match modified. If I'm doing broad, I put pure broad. I put those in there. So I have all my ad groups listed with all my keywords next to them in columns. And then below that, Chris, I repaste my ad groups again 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 3 sets of ad groups. And then I make my ads. So I have my description line, or my description for the first set of ads, my description for the second set, my description for the third set. And then we have our headline number 2 for the first set, headline number 2 for the second set, headline number 3 for the third set. So most of the time, Chris, I'm using not stock, but kind of like template for the specific client, headline 2s and descriptions that can fit most ads in the campaign, that can fit most ads. And then we really like custom headline number 1s that match the keyword search kind of close to what the person's searching for. So we like copy and paste the ad group name into the headline 1 column and then clean it up and make it better, more suitable for an ad. But we're getting an headline 1 that matches the ad group or keyword. We're getting headline 2s and descriptions that fit everything. And this is for massive builds with lots of different ad groups. If it's a small campaign, I might just do everything inside of Editor. But if it's a very large campaign, I'll do this sheet. And then we take the sheet, Chris, download it, upload it into Editor, and it will take what you have in the sheet row by row and column by column. And if you have everything set up correctly, and format that into ad groups and keywords and ads in Editor, just like that. And then what you can do from there is push that live to the account. And when you're doing huge builds, when you're doing a lot of builds, that is like, it's so much faster than doing everything manually inside of the account, copy and pasting, loading and all that. It's not even comparable. So that's the primary way I use Editor, is those big builds using those Google Sheets to upload into Editor.
I think what's really interesting is anyone who's listening and has not used Editor, Jason basically described zero knowledge that you need to know about Editor itself. I mean, a very basic knowledge of AdWords. If you are very comfortable and proficient in a spreadsheet program of some kind, no matter what you use, we're talking CSV file, export whatever you do into a CSV file, put it into AdWords Editor. You now have a way to take your expert knowledge in a spreadsheet system and put it into AdWords without having to use the actual program itself any more than just importing it.
Now, Chris, you're my biggest fan. I have a lot of fans online, but you're my biggest fan. So I know you know my biography. What was my career before Google Ads?
Accountant.
What do accountants do?
I think they get paid too little to do stuff with money. Is that the right answer?
They spend a lot of time in Microsoft Excel. So
that's what it is.
Boy, had a lot of Microsoft Excel skills built up over the years. Transfer those over. Now I like the Google Sheets platform. It's free.
That makes sense.
I love how it's online. And I took those skills in Excel, all the shortcuts I learned working as an accountant, and that seriously helped my base of working with Editor, having those Excel spreadsheet skills. So it was an interesting transfer of skills. Now, Chris, builds are the primary way we both use it. Once you upload it from the spreadsheet, and again, people, you have to get your columns and rows right, and there's tons of training online about that, I'm sure. Then you push it from Editor to the live account, and your build's done for the most part. But Chris, besides builds, there are still a ton of ways you and I use Editor every single day, even if it's not for kind of like performance management. So we will get into all those different ways and break them down. But first, I want to take a second to talk about today's sponsor, Directive Consulting. They are the go-to B2B search marketing agency. They do SEO, PPC, content, and they help B2B and enterprise clients get more leads, not only better leads, but more leads. So today's growth story is about their work with eSub, a construction software. eSub is a project management software. It's a software as a service, and it basically helps people in the construction industry communicate from the field to the office and handle all types of things and be more efficient. So eSub knew they wanted leads, so they started working with a small digital marketing agency who was providing SEO and PPC services. They were getting leads, but it was not a great return on investment. They knew they could do better. They found Directive, and Directive totally revamped their digital marketing approach. So they did two specific things that really helped them explode their leads. One is they targeted different keywords, both with PPC and SEO. They built out a lot of content pages on their website. They got great backlinks pointing to those pages to increase their page authority and ranking. So they got more organic Google traffic. And then what I thought was really interesting and something I'm going to start thinking about a lot more is in their PPC ad copy, they started using a lot more third-person ad copy talking about eSub as opposed to eSub just being self-promotional. So if there's one thing I probably need to get more balance in my life on, it's probably being a little bit less self-promotional. So I think using third-party quotes from other clients and that kind of thing in your ad copy, that's a tremendous strategy, and I'm going to start doing that. And so Directive took those two strategies, and they were able to drastically increase their return on investment when it came to digital marketing spend. Year over year, their organic traffic increased 756%. Their cost per lead decreased by 65%, and their overall increase in online leads was 71%. So Directive did this for eSub. I know Directive can do it for you. Go to directiveconsulting.com. They offer a free custom proposal. You got nothing to lose. Try it out. directiveconsulting.com. Get your free custom proposal. And we thank them for supporting the Paid Search podcast. Now, Chris, you and I, we don't so let's just get this out of the way first. You and I, we talk to other agencies. We talk to people in the business. We don't share the business. We talk about the business. We don't get into the business. Right. We're going to talk about the business right now. You know what I'm saying? Buy my car from me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Chris, we talk to other agencies, and they've told us straight up, they do a lot of day-to-day management for performance in Editor. So just quickly, I'm going to pull this up and talk about how people would do that if they're interested in that. You go into Editor. Just a tip for everybody, always do get recent changes. At least this was the way I was taught. If you do get recent changes, you're going to pull in the data from the live AdWords account to Editor, so you'll know you're working with the most recent data. And so always do get recent changes. And then you can do something that Chris and I don't do. You can view statistics. So if you go to the top headline there and click view statistics, you can choose your date range you want to get statistics for. You can choose what statistics you want to get, click-through rate, conversion, CPA, all that kind of stuff. And you can do your management through there. So a lot of people do that. Maybe Chris and I should, but at least for now, we don't. So the tips we're going to give are more like day-to-day things that come up that you can do quicker in Editor than you can in the live account. So Chris, is that an accurate representation of you and I basically not doing day-to-day performance management and not getting statistics? Do you ever get statistics?
On large campaigns, large accounts with specific filters needed. You know, I might need to do a specific type of filter with a certain type of keyword, and I need to know this, you know, all kinds of things that are a lot easier to just do quickly in AdWords Editor. But that's a rare case. That's a specific question a client might have, or for some special reporting. But no, in general, I would say definitely not. Gotcha. For me, what I like to do is making changes, and that's mainly what my points are going to be here. Are going to be about the way that I make changes and some of my favorite tips for making those changes in AdWords Editor.
Gotcha. Now, again, we can't give specific instructions because there's so much to go over and we don't want to mislead anybody. But I talked about get recent changes, Chris. That's always the first thing I do, just from my own experience. That's how I work it. get recent changes. And then when I'm done and I want to push something live to the account, I use the post button. So that's kind of the way it works. You pull in changes from the AdWords account to make sure you're working with the most recent data. You do your updates in the editor, and then you post it, you push it back live, you push those changes to the actual Google Ads account. So Chris, my top thing I use it for is like bulk changes. So I'm using the filter options quite a bit. The way I look at editor, you have the left sidebar and then you have the main screen. The left sidebar, you have your upper left navigation, which is where you look at your campaigns and your ad groups, and you select what campaign and what ad group you look at. And then your lower left nav bar is how you select what changes you want to make. Do you want to change locations? Do you want to change ad group names? Do you want to change keywords? Do you want to change match types? So that's basically the way I change it. So say, for example, Chris, I needed to figure out the client didn't want to do any ad groups that had to do with like commercial moves anymore. I would go into editor, I would filter for ad groups that have the word commercial or office in them or industrial, and I would pause them. That's kind of an example of how I use it. You can do that in the Google Ads account, but anybody who's used editor, it's just so much cleaner and quicker. It's so much quicker. So
Yeah,
that's kind of my
definitely.
big thing, is taking the massive amount of ad groups and keywords sometimes and filtering them down quite a bit. Only show me only show me keywords that have a modifier in them that use this word, but don't use the plural version of the word. Like there's a lot of stuff like that, Chris. Or say I look in the account and we had the word commercial and movers without a space between it, and we made that mistake. I can go into editor and say, show me anytime you see exactly the word commercial and mover tied together and not have a space in it. And then I can put in the space and push it live. So using the filter feature and fixing mistakes, I think, or finding specific things I need to find, that's my top go-to. What about you, Chris?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I have a top. I have my tips that I'm going to share. The first one I have is not necessarily a top, but it's just something that I do. So I'm going to I'm not going to put in any particular order. So first, one of the first things I've written here is something I like to do is adding labels to keywords, ad groups, or ads. Labels are a way to track metrics across independent of campaigns and ad groups. So a client's like, Chris, I don't see how these random keywords that you came up with, these 16 keywords that are spread across, that you had an idea that these were a subset of a certain category. I don't think they're working that well. I can add a label that says, Chris test for each one of those across everything. And I can do that really easily in AdWords Editor. That's something I really like to do. Adding labels can be done in bulk very quickly. Download changes, make changes, and then upload. So that's one of my little things like that that would take a little bit longer in
Right.
in the interface.
Oh, that would take a huge amount of time if you're trying to find keywords that use a specific topic or something and then add labels to them. And it's just so
Yeah.
much faster in the editor. And one feature that's just awesome is the find and replace feature. I talked about it a little bit with
Yeah.
fixing mistakes. Find and replace is amazing. And by the way, everybody out there, this kind of ties in with copying and pasting. Chris, you can open up an account in editor. That's one account. And then you can open up a totally separate client, a totally separate account. You can copy and paste that campaign from the first account into the second account, leave the first account untouched, close it, and then you already have a fully built out campaign in the new
To
account.
start with.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if you're running a
Yeah.
mover in Dallas and then you get a moving company client in Houston and you want to do the same exact keyword, same exact ad groups, most of the same ad copy, instead of building everything from scratch, you can go to your Dallas client, copy that campaign, paste it in the Houston account in editor, and then use find and replace to make those changes. You can also copy and paste ad groups and keywords within the same account. So find and replace and copying and pasting it's awesome. And again, I don't think you can copy full campaigns from one account to another account and then make your updates.
without editor. Yeah, without the editor. That's true. That's true. You can copy and paste campaigns within an account, but not account to account. You're right. That's not something that you can do. So very unique tool there. One thing that I really like is, let's say you're building a local campaign and it's writing along the same thing that you talked about, find and replace. You build a template, you build something that's going to work. And you don't know how many suburban areas you're going to add. Let's say you're working in the Houston area, and there's a ton of suburbs around there and you want to name a few of them, but you don't know how many. Or maybe you're 2 months in and you realize, oh, I didn't add this one. This one's getting some traffic. I need to add this one. The find and replace tool is great because I can take and copy an ad group or an entire campaign and paste that campaign and then say, every time there's an instance of the neighborhood Woodlands, replace that with an instance of, Kingwood or some other spring, something like that, and put that in there. And immediately you've now duplicated a geographic targeted campaign or ad group. And then a few other changes to the landing page and, geographic targeting and stuff. But you've taken all the guesswork out of, copying and pasting. It's an instant change this, change that, and it's done. So that's another huge advantage of using that. I really find it valuable specifically for geographic targeting, because the only thing that needs to change is really just the keyword, that geographic keyword.
Chris, I've got a mover in Florida, and he goes between West Palm Beach and Naples, Florida. They're on different sides of the states, and like multiple times he's had us be like, okay, I only want to run in West Palm Beach, and then he's like, okay, now I only want to run in Naples. And I don't know if he has like a baby mama in each city, and he's trying to go back and forth and run his businesses without them knowing, and has like 2 families. But it's just weird the way he changes on a dime. But the first time he changed, we had West Palm Beach built out, a great moving campaign, and then he goes, this is like a month into our new campaign, and he goes, hey, I want to target Naples. And because I know how to use editor, we were able to say, okay, give us a couple days, we'll get it done. And we didn't have to charge him anything extra, as opposed to some agencies who would go, you know what, we need a new setup fee of $1,500 because this is a totally new campaign. Yeah. We didn't have to do that because I know all you have to do is copy and paste the campaign in editor. Anytime it says West Palm Beach, replace that with Naples, and then you're good to go, and replace the final URL with the Naples website. So it makes things so easy. And speaking of final URLs, Chris, you and I both know we have clients that modify their websites and change their page links and all that kind of stuff all the time. Some clients go from HTTP now going to HTTPS. Some clients change their folders and all that kind of stuff. So one of the coolest things that I use editor for is changing final URLs and double checking them. So Chris, we had an interesting situation where a mover wanted to they have a moving company in Boston and a moving company in Seattle. Their website's not up to par. So their website's not doing that great, but they have great Yelp pages, Chris. And so we're actually running Google ads to Yelp pages because their Yelp pages really are great with lots of reviews and stuff. And so they wanted to point the Boston campaign to their Boston Yelp page and the Seattle campaign to their Seattle Yelp page. And so we made that change, but after we made the change, I started freaking out, and I'm like, oh man, if we get those Yelp pages wrong and mixed up, we are screwed. If we are sending Boston moving traffic to the Seattle Yelp page, we're screwed. So I was kind of worrying about that a week in because I had delegated this to someone. And so I was able to I emailed the delegation, but in terms of checking it, Chris, I did not have to check every single ad and click on the ad in the account and see if it went to the right Yelp page. What I was able to do is go into editor, sort by final URL, and then see that all the URLs that had the Seattle page matched up to the Seattle campaign, and all the URLs that had the Boston Yelp page matched up to the Boston Yelp page. And so so if you have a client that goes, hey, I just redid my website, I need you to check my ads and make sure they're working, you're probably thinking, bro, we've been running your account for 5 years. We're running to all different types of service pages. How are we going to go and click on every ad and see if every service page is working? You don't have to do that. Go into editor, get recent changes to make sure you're looking at live data, sort your final URL, and then you're going to see the chunks of final URLs there. Say you're using 10, it's still manageable to scan through, even 20, because they're all going to be sorted together. And you can go, okay, here's the first URL that 50 ads are pointing to. Let me copy and paste that in the browser, see if it's the right URL. Do that 10, 20 times. It takes 5 minutes, you're done. So Chris, checking final URLs, editing them, making sure they're right. I'm doing that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, absolutely. That's something I've used many times before. I want to talk. One of my next tip is a change to, instead of find and replace, it's going to talk about the append feature, and this is something I use all the time. When I build a campaign, I often build it at broad keyword level. Okay, some insight into how I build campaigns. If you've done training with me, you know this. I start with broad keywords for everything, and then I'll make decisions about which keywords I want to get into modified broad, phrase, and exact from there. So I put everything into broad match, and here's what's complicated about modified broad. You can't just go select and say, change this to modified broad. There is no way to choose modified broad as a match type. You have to add pluses. So the append feature is great, because I love the append feature, because what I'll do is, let's say there's 1,000 keywords in here, and I have all these keywords, and I need to grab everything that says plumbing or plumber in Houston. And I want everything to make sure that the word plumbing and Houston or plumber and Houston has a plus right before it. So I will go in and say, append a plus before the text of plumber on everything, and I'll filter only things that are broad match, so that I know none of my exact match are going to get a plus added to them. None of my phrase are. I know it's just the broad match. I'll put the plus on, and then I'll change it and say, change everything that is Houston with a broad keyword match type, and it puts a plus in front of it. Add a plus in front of that. So this is a great way to change match types using that append feature, which is really a dream for me. And often I will use this same feature for something like, adding an additional level of detail to a keyword. So I might have the keyword plumber in Houston, but I realize the client's getting a lot of clicks about sinks or toilets or something like that. I'll say append this word to the word plumber, and I'll put broken sink plumber in Houston. So now I have a longer tail keyword to use, and I didn't have to go in and, I can copy and paste this and say, now grab all these keywords and add broken sink plumber in Houston.
Right.
And now I have a longer tail keyword, and I didn't have to go in and redo all of it, figure out all the keywords. I just add those keywords in, append them at the beginning, or at the end of the keyword, whatever. This is super useful for me to diversify my keywords, add and remove different aspects of them, and be able to generate literally thousands of keywords instantly without having to do all kinds of manipulation in the AdWords UI.
Chris, it's interesting you mentioned that, and I'm glad we always learn from each other on the show. Whenever I've made broad keywords more modified and wanted to add modifiers in there, I've always done find and replace. So I'd be like, find the word Houston on my broad keywords and replace it with plus on Houston. But the append tool is more suited for that directly. So I think I'm going to start. I had never used that before, so I'm glad you talked about that. Now, you have another tip here about comments. I'm just going to make an editorial decision, Chris. We're not going to talk about that one. I'm going to give a couple more tips. I'm going to give a couple more tips, and then I'm very curious about your last tip here, because I don't follow what it is, and I want to see what that is. Okay. But before we get to that, I just want to tell everyone about a couple no-brainer tools that are just awesome. The first one is find duplicate keywords. A lot of people have been writing in about that, Chris. If you go up to tools at the top of your screen, it will find duplicate keywords in different ad groups, and then you can delete the ones you don't want. So that's a great tool. And then another use of the Google Ads Editor, and this is for all the paranoid AdWords managers out there, regular backups of your account. It is a nice feeling knowing that you can take the AdWords Editor, get recent changes, so you're looking at the live account, or you're looking at the most recent account, the way it is in AdWords, in Google Ads, and then back it up by downloading the full account into a CSV. And if anything happens, if a client messes up and does a bunch of changes, if you lose access, if someone deletes the campaign accidentally, you've got a nice backup there. All you have to do is upload it back into Editor and push it to the live account, and you've got the campaign. You won't have all the historical data, but at least you have a backup, and you can go you can get right into what you were doing before. So I think that's a great feature of the editor. Now, Chris, you're talking about finding unknown targeting methods with Editor.
Yes.
What are you talking about here?
Yeah, well, I didn't realize this would be so interesting to you, but I tell you what, I'm going to pull up AdWords Editor on my screen because I'm going to walk you through where this is because it's a little hidden. So there's on the left-hand side of the screen, there's 4 different things. There's the campaigns, then there's the manage, then there's the shared library, and then there's the custom rules.
Okay.
Right? You with me there?
I'm with you.
So in the manage, there's a little funnel. There's a search bar there in the manage, and then there's a funnel. And inside that funnel, when you click it, you can go to hide empty types. Okay, I love this. It makes
girl,
it takes
you changing my world right now, girl.
Yeah, so this is great because do that and then expand your keywords and targeting drop down tree there. And you only see that you have keywords, negative keywords, locations, audiences. It's only going to show things that have stuff in them. So basically what you can do is you can immediately check, am I doing audiences on any of these? Do I have audiences tagged on any of these? Do I have how many negative keywords do I have? Do any of these not have negative keywords? You can immediately scroll through each of your campaigns, use the arrow keys, 1, 2, 3, jump up. Okay, this one. You can see how many locations are in each, and it's all compact and easy to see. The numbers right there in the parentheses. I love it. I use it, just as a sanity check. If I'm checking something, okay, this should have 4 locations. Good. This should have 1 audience. Good. This should have, a couple keyword.
Well, it looks like Chris got a little too excited there in the ads editor, and he dropped off. But before he went away, what a tip, everybody! I like that tip because I recommend you all doing this while you're listening to the show because it really is interesting seeing it happen. It's a lower left navigation in Editor, the word manage, and then there's a little search bar, a little funnel filter button there, and you click that, and then you hit hide empty types. And I think that's a great thing because it draws your attention to the keywords and targeting options with zero adjustments in them. So if a client asks you, how do I make things better? You can scroll through that list and go, oh, we have 0 adjustments on genders or 0 adjustments on household income. And that can cue you off to, hey, maybe we can make some changes there and increase the quality of the traffic. So I like it for that. And then I also like it to make things a little easier to manage. One of the things that's always been hard for me about the editor in that manage section is there's so many options. So there's like placements, mobile apps, topics, dynamic ad targets, genders, ages, some of this stuff I've never even heard of. So when I'm going through there trying to go from keywords to my locations to my ages to genders and make changes in those common things I make changes in, it's kind of hard because there's so many options there. So I'm going to start doing this hide empty types to make that a little cleaner. And I can just focus on the ones that I have adjustments in and be able to scroll through them very quickly. So Chris, if you're out there listening because he dropped off somehow, we appreciate that tip. And I think that's a great tip. So that is it, obviously, everybody, today, because Chris is gone. I guess he had to go to the bathroom or something. So, but we appreciate Directive Consulting sponsoring the show. They are the go-to B2B and search engine marketing agency. They offer free custom proposals at directiveconsulting.com. And we appreciate you, everybody out there, the listeners. Thank you for helping us grow this show. Thank you for sharing it with friends and colleagues. If you have any questions for us, we have a PPC questions and answers show that comes out every Tuesday and Wednesday, and you can find all that stuff at paidsearchpodcast.com. So we thank you for listening. We thank you for sharing, and we will be back every Monday with a new episode of the Paid Search Podcast.